Welcome to the opening line report right here on Vegas Insider. As we look ahead to week 7 in the NFL, Kevin Rogers with you here on this Sunday evening in for TommyFreezePops, and looking forward to this edition of the opening line report. Patrick Everson is going to join us in just a few minutes to look at some of the key games for week 7 in the NFL and where the line moves are at. And week 6, pretty interesting considering 5 dogs won outright on Sunday, which is pretty amazing, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, as that line just jumped up against Tampa Bay with all the injuries the Steelers had, and they still knocked off Tom Brady and the Buccaneers at home. Also, New England blew out Cleveland on Sunday, so the Patriots, they are getting back on track, and they easily cashed as 2.5-point dogs. You saw the upset at Lambeau Field with the Jets beating the Packers, and all of a sudden the Jets have won 3 straight, so they're on fire. They're at 4-2 amazingly. And Atlanta also knocking off San Francisco at home. And the Falcons now a perfect 6-0 against the spread so far on the season, which there's no other team that has gone through the whole season and covered every game except for the Atlanta Falcons. And they did so today. So a lot of big upsets, and also even a minor upset considering they're a home underdog. The Seattle Seahawks, they beat Arizona at home in a low-scoring game, and the Seahawks, with that victory, they keep getting towards the 500 mark, and they're at the 500 mark. In fact, at 3-3, and Arizona falls to 2-4. But a lot to go over with the Week 7 slate as we bring in our friend Patrick Everson. That's right, you know he's always here. Patrick, you are a busy man. We know that. And first of all, before we get to Week 7, just Week 6. A lot of survivor pool losers with San Francisco, with Green Bay, with Tampa Bay, also parlay losers. Who was the biggest, I guess, winner for the books on Sunday? Was it the Buccaneers losing to the Steelers, or maybe the Packers losing to the Jets?
I think it was a combination of those two. It probably depended on which book you were at, but those were both very good outcomes behind the counter. Nobody's seeing the Steelers jumping up and winning that game outright. I'll find my phone here. I've got a great comment from Jason Scott on that, the vice president of trading for BetMGM. And I'm trying to remember exactly what it was because it was a few hours ago and it's been a really long day. But let's see. He said Mike Tomlin as a dog. I guess particularly what he means is a home dog, because obviously Mike Tomlin as a dog at Buffalo was nothing to write home about. But Mike Tomlin as a dog, the gift that just keeps giving for bookmakers. So they really enjoyed that Pittsburgh outright win. The Jets getting their outright was good. Baltimore generally good, not necessarily everywhere. The Baltimore result, the Giants winning. Atlanta outright is just everybody's money line parlay had the Rams in it. So they're just overall it's shaping up to be a pretty good day for the odds makers. I'm still waiting to hear back on where they are at with the Chiefs, and some of that may depend on exactly what happens here. If you're talking about parlays and money line parlays and teasers and such, what happens with this Sunday night game. But early on, I don't think the odds makers were complaining very much at all. They look like they're having a decent day.
And also, too, that over in the Bills-Chiefs game never even got threatened. A lot of people, right, Patrick, were on that over. And I said this on my Best Bet video, and not to say I'm Nostradamus or anything, but in that playoff game last year, a lot of people forget you had a lot of scoring in the final 2 minutes of that game and then going into overtime. That was stayed under the total for the most part before things kind of blew up. So, the second time around, everyone thinks it's going to go back and forth, but the Chiefs off a short week, I didn't think that was going to be the case. I think it'd be that low scoring, but I'm surprised people just blindly went into it, hitting or trying to hit the over.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I was actually on a program a little bit earlier today during the later kicks. The late afternoon Eastern time starts, early afternoon Pacific time starts on a BetMGM live stream program inside the betting lines with Dave Fair and Adam Candy, and that was the point that all of us were kind of making. Hey, yes, what everybody remembers is there was this high-flying, high-scoring affair in the playoffs. It was maybe the best playoff game ever. I feel like it was the best playoff game ever. That was just a lot of fun to watch. But a ton of points were scored in the last 2 minutes of that game, and then you get overtime. So another touchdown, another 6 points comes up in overtime. People may have forgotten that it wasn't exhilarating for 60 minutes. It was really take your breath away for the last 2-3 minutes of regulation, and then the one drive in overtime that sealed it for Kansas City. I think it's a great point.
Who was the biggest loser for the books on Sunday, Patrick? Was it the Vikings winning that game in Miami? Was it the Rams? Who was the biggest loser that you have there?
That's a good question, and I hadn't seen much on that yet, other than in my conversation late this afternoon, just before the Sunday night game kicked off, with Chris Andrews at the South Point. And what he pointed out is when you look at some of these results, you think, okay, the bookmakers just had a banner day, and they did have most of them had a banner day. And even Chris admits, look, we had a pretty good day, but it wasn't as good as you might think when you, at first blush, when you look at some of the way some of those results came down. He said, we won 2 big games, obviously the Steelers beating the Bucs and the Jets over the Packers. Huge behind the counter at South Point. And as I noted earlier, that was huge elsewhere. But he said the Bengals were bad, the Vikings were bad, and somehow at the South Point, the Falcons were horrible. So, and one of the reasons was they saw a lot of sharp play come in. And I guess really for whatever reason at South Point, the public never really jumped on the other side. And you can almost understand it. The Rams have not looked good, but they opened that game 6. It got all the way down to 3.5. And Chris said it was sharp play all the way down. And although he did say a big ticket discrepancy, but just the money just seemed to roll in for the dog there, and didn't work out on him. He said wise guys were on the Falcons like they knew the final score, and for whatever, so that reason that wasn't good. Patriots, I don't think was particularly good for them either, but still a good day overall for the South Point. Just some results that were bad, and it sounds like the Falcons were the worst of those. I don't think that sentiment shared by many. I think that's just a unique spot that Chris found himself in, which happens.
Patrick, are the Sharps riding this Falcon train? Because now it's 6-0 ATS this year, and they keep, it's not even about just covering that they're, the Bucs game last week, they were in a big hole and they came back, but they're starting to win some of these games. That it's not just, we're getting backdoor covers, that they're starting to win some of these games that are even Sharps. Or, the public is learning about this now about the Falcons, but are you just riding this blind, or are you kind of going week by week with the Falcons?
Look, the Sharps, I would guess, would never ride anything blind, but they were certainly intrigued this week. I'd have to go back through my notes and see if this is something that's gone on over the last couple of weeks, but the Sharp guys were definitely intrigued this week. And again, as Chris Andrews said at South Point, and other odds makers told me this as well yesterday, today, as we were, with all the reporting that's up on Vegas Insider in my article, and also in the videos that we did throughout the day on Vegas Insider previewing all these games. When we talked about Atlanta this morning, it was Atlanta pretty much getting bet all the way down 6, 5.5, 5, 4.5. And Chris said it was all the way down from 6 to 3.5. So I'm really kind of surprised they kept riding that at once it gets to 4, 3.5. But apparently they didn't get it down to 3, but they're enthused by the Falcons this week, and certainly believers. And to your point, the Falcons are winning these games too. I think they're halfway to their win total now. I think their win total was 6, and they're halfway there 6 weeks in. They've been very competitive, and today they rolled today. The second half, look, it wasn't a blowout, but they were up 7 at halftime, shut the Rams out in the second half. I don't know what the hell's going on with the Rams, but shut the Rams out in the second half and win that game. It's interesting what's going on in Atlanta for sure.
Yeah, they're playing well, and they're hanging around there in the NFC South. All right, let's look ahead now to Week 7. We could turn the page to that. Thursday night, the Saints and the Cardinals, they meet up in Arizona, Patrick, and a couple storylines here. Number one, that DeAndre Hopkins expected back for the Cardinals after the 6-game suspension. They could definitely use him. Number two, Arizona has been horrid at home so far this year. And I know they played the Chiefs, they played the Rams, they played the Eagles, they played pretty good teams. So they're not losing a bad team. But this team last won at home, Patrick, in October last year, because the first loss during the streak came in that Thursday night game against Green Bay. Before that, they blew out Houston. That's the last time they won at home. So what have you heard early on? Cardinals and the Saints, New Orleans coming off a bad loss at home to Cincinnati. Not because, obviously the Bengals are good, but they were up most of that game and they blew it late. But what have you heard with the Saints-Cardinals game to kick off Thursday?
Right. And this has all got some great stuff, really fresh stuff, like literally in the last 10 minutes. You and I got delayed a couple of minutes. I got delayed jumping on, so I apologize at the top there. But John Murray got me some great stuff on several of the noteworthy matchups this week. And he noted right out of the gate kind of what I noted when I sent it to him. The slate this week is awful. But look, it's the NFL. It's going to get bet. Here's what he had to say about the Saints Cardinals. First off, it's a Thursday night game, and these Thursday night games have really been kind of paltry lately. And he says right out of the gate, another Thursday gem, and he's being facetious, of course. He said, I'm curious to see how much farther the Cardinals go with Kingsbury. Their offense is just lifeless. The team has too much talent to be playing this poorly, to your point. He said he thinks this is going to be a lightly bet game given the matchup, but it is still the NFL and it's in prime time. So there should be at least some interest, but he didn't normally in these comments he gives me each Sunday night, if he feels like he knows what the need's going to be by the end of the week, or if there's been any interesting action right out of the gate, some sharp play maybe coming in early, he'll note that. He didn't note any of that in this game. So just not expecting much and definitely not enthused with Kingsbury and how that team is playing. Now you point out you get a super talented receiver back. Maybe that helps kick things into gear, but boy, this team just really hasn't been the same over the last almost a year now, right? After getting off to a really good start last season.
Well, think about this for a second, Patrick. They had no business winning that Raider game in week 2.
No
business at all. And they came back and won that game, and they beat Carolina. And Carolina's awful. They fired their head coach. They gave him $40 million to walk away. They have no quarterback. So really, Arizona, 7-0 last year. And I get Kyler got hurt and all that, but maybe he's just not the same quarterback. But on the New Orleans side for a second, you have the Red Rifle starting again, probably Andy Dalton. He had no receivers today. Olave was out, Michael Thomas was out, Jarvis Landry was out. They still were winning that game most of the way. So obviously we'll see if one or two of those guys maybe comes back before Thursday, and that'll help the Saints cause, and we'll see if this line even moves a tick.
Yeah, and I think it might, and I think you make really good points with regard to who the Saints were missing today, and the fact that I didn't see the end of that game. I just I went through the box score as I was putting together my opening line report article, which will be up on Vegas Insider a little bit later after our show ends. We'll get that in motion and get that posted. But it looked like it was really a matter of if the Saints could have got another couple of first downs, that game was over, right? I mean, they could have potentially put it away late and instead allowed if I recall correctly, allowed the Bengals to get the last 2 scores of that game and get the win, right?
Yeah, and Burrow hit Jamar Chase back in their Louisiana reunion down there, and he was wearing the Chase jersey. But obviously, a really good win for the Bengals, and they've kind of come back to life a bit. But one other note here in this game, Patrick, that total's at 45 right now. We saw 2 very low-scoring games in these prime games the last 2 weeks. That Colts-Broncos game, no touchdowns. The Commanders-Bears was 12-7. So I wonder if people are going to come in again and say, well, you have another low-scoring game. But I don't know if that's the case because the Saints can't put up points.
Right. I think that's a good point. I think that's kind of the hope for this game is that the Saints put up points. And I kind of alluded to that in my write-up, again, for the article that's going up later. I noted, hey, at least hopefully there's a little glimmer of promise to this game because the Saints have put up a fair amount. I think 25 points or more in 3 of their last 4 games. So hopefully at least even if we decide not to wager on it, hopefully there's a chance that we'll be entertained a little bit. And I'm just checking through Superbook's numbers right now just to see if it's stuck at 45. Nothing's happened on that game so far. You got Cardinals -2, total 45. No movement yet. If the public really leans into this, well, even sharp bettors for that matter, but if people kind of lean into this, what's been going on these last couple of Thursdays, and to an extent with primetime unders over the course of the season, although tonight's got there late, which got me. I got bit by that one. I had the first half under. I guess the whole game under still could come in. I had the first half under. If people look at these last couple of Thursdays, they might be thinking under on this, and I couldn't blame them. But hopefully we get entertained a little bit, and the Saints put up some points, and maybe a rejuvenated Cardinals team with star wide out back can find a way to start putting up some points as well.
Let's look at some of the Sunday games now,
Sure.
Patrick. The New York Giants, they continue to get disrespected. Another
Mm-hmm.
time that they're an underdog. And granted, against the Packers in London, I get it. But, I mean, against Baltimore, yeah, the Ravens blew a couple of games, but the Giants still been playing well. They came back and won that game on Sunday, and Lamar Jackson made a terrible throw, and the Giants ended up scoring a touchdown there to win it. But Brian Daboll's done a fantastic job. They're 5-1, the Giants so far. Now they go to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. I guess the Tom Coughlin Bowl, this is what we could call it in a sense. But Jacksonville, when you look at what they've done this year, Patrick, the Washington game they blew, the Indianapolis game on Sunday they blew, that they had opportunities there, and the Colts, they bucked up, and they ended up playing well, and the Colts now have kind of played their way back in the AFC South. But Jacksonville now has fallen off the last few weeks. They've lost 3 in a row since a nice little 2-1 start. But are the people still going to go against the Giants here, or maybe say, all right, I'm going to take the points with them because they're 5-1 and Jacksonville's been struggling?
Yeah, that's what John Murray expects. Jags a short favorite in this game, which I don't know if it surprised me. I kind of thought maybe this would be, pick'em perhaps, but Jags 2.5 was the opener and I'm curious, I'll check their numbers and see if there, in case there was any movement on that. Jags actually 2.5 minus 120. So, but what John said about this is, to your point, he said, I would expect the public to definitely be on the dog here. He said the Giants continue to reward bettors, 5-1 straight up and against the spread. This game tonight that we're watching, the Sunday night game for week 6, Dallas has climbed back into this. I mean, if Dallas wins, you're going to have 3 teams at 5-1 in the NFC East. So, the Giants, could be tied for first place by the end of the night. Perhaps not. I'm seeing Philly kind of make its way down the field. But, what John also added, he said the Giants just keep winning games at some point. And again, you noted this right at the top when you mentioned this game. At some point, you have to give them credit, even though I thought today's win was gifted to them on an unbelievably bad decision from Lamar Jackson. I totally agree with that. Just unreal that he threw that pick. And then he gets, it would maybe lucky, but you've got to have ball security back there in the pocket, turning it over on the next possession. So back-to-back Lamar Jackson turnovers, it makes you start wondering about Baltimore now too. And certainly the Bengals, as you alluded to earlier, getting a key win kind of gets them back to life in that AFC North.
So New York at 5-1, and look, like Bill Parcells said, wins are what you're right. You are what your record is, and there's no taking away from them. And Jacksonville, not say they were turning the corner, Patrick, but they were 2-1. And look, I get that Indianapolis always struggled in Jacksonville. It's their house of horrors. And then Justin Herbert wasn't healthy in week 3, and they took advantage of it. But also in the last 3 games, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing for the Jags, but they blow a 14-0 lead at Philadelphia. They were tied late with Houston, and then against the Colts again, they had an opportunity to win. And I mentioned the Washington game too, that they've been in all of these games, and you say, all right, can you just find a way to get over the hump? They've had 2 blowout wins and 4 close losses. So are they better than their record, or were those 2 wins just flukes?
Right, and that's a really good question, and maybe this week's game will go a ways toward answering it if they can find a way to cool off the Giants, who are a really hot team and playing really, really well. And to your point, in the last 3, not only 0-3 straight up, but 0-3 against the spread. After again a convincing road win against the Chargers. Again, granted, Herbert dinged up in that game, but going across country and blowing them out was certainly not what people expected. Even if Herbert hadn't played, and maybe Herbert shouldn't have played. I kind of think he shouldn't have under those circumstances when you're looking at the whole season, and we're talking week 2. But yeah, I think it's a point worth making, and then even the week 2 win where they blasted the Colts, and people during the offseason, me included, thought the Colts might be something special. And maybe they're turning the corner and kind of getting it together, but I don't think they're going to be anything special, not from what I've seen so far. So, yeah, I mean, they're right there. It looked like they were 2-1. It looked like they were turning the corner. Maybe this is another corner turner this week if they can find a way to get it together against a really good Giants team that's playing really well.
Now let's transition to that AFC South matchup in Nashville. I just don't understand this. Why did the NFL burn these 2 games already? The Colts and Titans are done after this. Colts already played the Titans and Jags 4 times through the first 7 weeks, which I do not understand. But regardless, like you mentioned, Indianapolis maybe turning the corner. Matt Ryan finally played well on Sunday. against Jacksonville after they were god-awful in week 2, and he lit them up in week 6. Now they go to Nashville, quick revenge spot, Patrick, after they lost to Tennessee at home, where Tennessee jumped out on them, a few weeks ago and held them off as a dog. And now Tennessee has flipped to a favorite. Tennessee's off the bye, and the Colts may be playing with some momentum off the Bronco win as well before that. But what are the early whispers on this Titans game with Tennessee laying 2 at home?
Right, and I'm double checking just to make sure nothing's moved on this. 2-42.5 was the opener at the Superbook tonight, Sunday night. Nothing on that yet. No movement on that yet. And what John Murray is just so brutally honest. I love it. I know the Colts are 3-2-1. That 3-2-1 straight up is quite a record to have. He said, but I don't understand why or how. They pulled off another late game win today against the Jaguars. Not really sure how the bettors are going to bet the book on this one. But he says, I do know the wise guys seem to like the Colts. And by the way, that's been kind of a trend with the Colts. The Colts over the last couple of seasons, John's told me this a few times, trendy as a road dog for the wise guys. So perhaps Indy sees a little bit of sharp play this week. But yeah, I'm with you on this schedule thing. When I was writing this up tonight, I'm like, wait a minute, didn't they just play? And they did just play. I believe it was week 4. Let me double check as I was writing this up. I believe it's week 4. Let's see here. Colts. They lost at Tennessee in week 4, and now they're coming back in week 7 and playing them again. Yep. I don't understand. I mean, especially when, I think more than anybody who's beyond a casual observer, you don't have to be like a hardcore observer, but anybody who's beyond a casual observer knows that, at least going into this season, the Colts and the Titans, if there was going to be a battle in the AFC South, it was probably going to be between those teams. So why isn't one of those games in week 16, 17, 18 when it's going to have some serious meaning to bury these, early in the season, really close together? It just seems short-sighted by the schedule makers. And I'm not even sure the teams would be really excited about facing each other, this early in the season twice.
The other thing, too, is you mentioned the number with the Colts. I believe it's 6-0 now against the spread for Frank Reich since last season as a road dog, and or the last 6, because they had a few losses early on in the season. Last year, they lost at Tennessee, I remember, as a dog. And this year, they won at Denver, that Thursday night game. But they've done a good job. And they won at Buffalo last year. They destroyed Buffalo as a road dog. So they've done well in that role. And again, quick revenge spot. And for Tennessee, Patrick, when you look at what the Titans have done so far in the season, they beat the Raiders a few weeks ago when they were listed as a home dog. That was a pick 'em, and then it jumped to 2. But Tennessee also lost to the Giants at home, which actually doesn't look like a bad loss now. But Tennessee, I just don't know how much I trust them laying a few points. And then on the flip side with Indianapolis, I actually do trust them as a road dog.
I do too. I would like to see that Jonathan Taylor did sit today, right? So if he's back next week, I think that potentially makes a big difference. I'd lean toward Indy, trusting Indy a little bit more as a road dog. I mean, even though the Titans are 3-0 straight up against the spread in their last 3, I mean, the win over Washington wasn't anything really to write home about. And I know that was a pick'em game, so I guess it was expected to be close, but still, I don't think I would. I don't think I could put my money on Tennessee. I don't know if I'll put it on Indy. I might think about it, but I won't be surprised at all if there's sharp play that shows up on the Colts as a road dog. To your point, Reich coached Colts teams as home or as road dogs have done pretty well.
I mentioned before, Patrick, the Tom Coughlin Bowl. Now we have the Joe Montana Bowl out in San Francisco. For those of you who don't remember, he was a member of the Chiefs. He took them to the AFC Championship his first year, 1993. Yes, anyway, after a subpar career in San Francisco. So
finally got it together.
Right. They had one sneaky Super Bowl win over the Broncos. One that
oh God.
Yeah, I'm not bringing it up. I'll leave it alone.
55-10, man. I know the score.
So the Chiefs here, all right, they're off the loss to Buffalo, and watching the end of that game after Josh Allen led the Bills down like he did last year, there was a minute 3 left in the clock. I'm like, come on, you left a minute 3 for Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly. I thought the same thing.
Right. He throws the interception. So the Bills were able to win that game. I'm not saying they exercised the demons or anything, but they got over in Kansas City here. So now the Chiefs are going out to the Bay Area. They face the 49ers, who are back after basically a 2-week trek out east because they went to Carolina, won. They stayed out east. They lost the Atlanta game. So now you're back home after a lengty road trip, it seems like. And the Niners, who have been pretty feisty, even with Jimmy G in for Trey Lance. And the Chiefs, as a road favorite this year, they lost to the Colts. They blew out Arizona. Now let's see what they do. And what have you heard with the Chiefs and the Niners kicking off on Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting the Chiefs are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5, if I've got that correct. This is, on what's a pretty, below average schedule, this is the one game that that probably stands out the most. I didn't realize this. These two, maybe they met in the preseason. I don't know, but they haven't met in a meaningful game since these two teams played in the Super Bowl a couple of years back when the Chiefs beat the Niners. John said again, another one where they haven't moved off the openers, but he sent that to me a little bit ago, and so I'm gonna check it right now because I'm always curious to see. Things do change. 2.5 and 47. That's still where they're sitting at the Superbook. I think this is a good point from John. This is a tricky spot. He said the Chiefs' schedule never seems to let up. You got the Bills. They've already played the Bucs on the road. They played the Bills at home. Now they got to go out and face the Niners on the road. The Niners, I think, not that it was that it would take a genius to do it, but still, smart decision to just stay out on the Southeast coast and play those 2 games and then come home. So it maybe doesn't feel like quite the, all the back and forth of wear and tear of road trips. But as John said, the Chiefs' schedule never seems to let up. And a week after playing the Bills, they have to head west to take on the 49ers. He feels like the public is still going to back KC here, but he does say it's another tough spot for Mahomes and company. And obviously the Niners are going to be itching to get the stink off their loss today. So, it's definitely a difficult position for KC. And really, depending on what happens there, it's going to kind of throw the AFC West wide open again when the Chiefs had a chance to start clamping down a little bit, perhaps.
It's funny. You have a 3-week stretch there, Patrick, where you have 2 Super Bowl rematches from the last few seasons and a playoff rematch, 3 consecutive opponents for the Chiefs with the
exactly
with the Buccaneers, with the Bills, and with the 49ers. You say it doesn't let up. It's like, oh, you're not playing good teams. You're playing teams you played in the Super Bowl. So you have all this going on. And back to San Francisco for a second. So you're favored the last 2 weeks. You were favored at Denver. You were favored at Chicago. This is the first time they're an underdog on the season, and they are 2-0 at home. They beat Seattle pretty convincingly, and they beat the Rams convincingly. So now you're getting points with the Niners at home, which you don't normally see. Remember last year against the Rams, the Monday night, they blew them out, but you don't normally see San Francisco as a home dog.
Right. It's not to the degree of Kansas City. The Chiefs being a home dog today in week 5 or week 6 rather is really unusual, getting plus money on the money line with the Chiefs and so forth. But it is unusual to see San Francisco at home getting points. It's probably, I'd have to look back. It's probably been a while. And like I said, that team is going to be smarting from what happened today. Not that Kansas City won't be, perhaps a little more, perhaps a little refocused after losing to Buffalo. But boy, it's just a tough schedule for Kansas City. No question about it.
Yeah, they're not drawing. And even actually, let me rephrase it. I said in the span, you had Tampa Bay. Also, you forgot about the Las Vegas game this past week. They had that 1 point game against the Raiders.
Yeah.
It's like, it just never ends for them. But we'll see. It should be a pretty interesting game. And again, Super Bowl rematch where San Francisco had Kansas City dead to rights, and the Chiefs came back. They had that long Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill connection that helped the rally. It's so funny, Patrick, because with the pandemic, you almost forgot the Super Bowl was only 2 seasons ago because it felt like it was 10 years ago.
Oh gosh, it feels like it was forever ago. And I remember, covering that in the books during the game. I was at the link and the atmosphere was amazing. And it was like the last big, fun, cool thing before all hell broke loose. It was the first week of February, and there was a little talk about something going on with something over in China or whatever. But man, the place was packed and everybody was having a ball. And, you're starting to, that game ends and you're like, oh man, it's just, 5-6 weeks till March Madness. We're going to do this all over, and it's going to be like 10 times the number of people here. It'll be ridiculous. Obviously, that didn't happen.
That did not happen.
A big, cool sports event, major sports event before the pandemic. And you're right, it's easy to forget about it, but that was, February of 2020, so 2.5 years ago.
So that game was played at Hard Rock Stadium, where the Sunday night game this week. You like that transition, don't you?
That's really good stuff, man.
Steelers,
like a journalist or something.
I'm telling you, sometimes you got to tie it together. So,
yes.
All right, there's so many things going on in this game, Patrick, Sunday night. Number one, Tua Tagovailoa is expected to return for the Dolphins after his stint with the concussions, and he was cleared, and the protocol and all this other stuff. The Dolphins are coming off now 3 consecutive losses. They were 3-0. Now they've dropped 3 straight. Now they face the Steelers, in which Kenny Pickett came in for Mitchell Trubisky, but then Pickett got a concussion, so Trubisky had to finish the game against Tampa Bay and help lead the Steelers past the Buccaneers, and probably one of the upsets of the years because Pittsburgh has been so bad. But now the Steelers head down to South Florida. They're getting 6.5. What have you heard with the numbers moving on this one? Obviously, things will change during the week depending on who's going to start for Pittsburgh.
Right, exactly. They're going to have to see, and obviously that's factoring in not only the that Miami is supposed to get Tua back, but also the iffiness on the Pittsburgh QB situation is certainly factoring into that number being what it is. And that's what John pointed out. He said Miami is supposed to get Tua back, and they definitely need him ASAP. He said it's easy to forget how hot that team was at 3-0 after beating the Bills. And really the week before, I know the Bills win at home was impressive, but what was more impressive was that comeback against Baltimore. geez, I think 28 points, 4 fourth quarter TD passes from Tua. He was on fire. It was ridiculous. John said, even in the wake of the public remembering what it sees last with the Steelers up, just totally stifling Tom Brady and the Bucs. He said, I think we're going to need Pittsburgh here, but it is a pretty weak Sunday night game. He doesn't anticipate the handle being anywhere close to what we saw tonight. And by tonight, what he's talking about is this Cowboys-Eagles game, which had great handle, as did, of course, the Bills-Chiefs game. And to that end, I think it's worth pointing out that there probably won't be a whole lot of people. Generally, the Sunday night game, you've got parlays and moneyline parlays and teasers running to that game. I'm not sure that people are going to be too enthused to finish their parlays, moneyline parlays, and teasers with the Steelers or the Dolphins at this point without at least having seen the Dolphins get Tua back and see what he is and what he can do.
Now, even though, I'm not going to say it's hindsight 2020 because I had the Steelers today, but I want to give you this one, Patrick, and this for our audience too. This is now the 3rd time this season that a home underdog off of I've played the system for a long time. We've tracked this, and it's been pretty good.
Go.
A home underdog off of a road loss of 21 or more, it's like gold. And that was the Steelers today after they lost to Buffalo. They were a heavy home dog to the Bucs. Other times this year, Tennessee was blown out at Buffalo. They were a dog to the Raiders, beat them. The Colts were blown out. They were shut out, by Jacksonville. And then in week 3, they ended up beating Kansas City. We talked about that a few weeks ago about how the line movement in that game went back and forth. So that's one to look at. Those ugly home dogs. Oh, they stink. They just got blown out. They're not that good. That's the time to take them. You knew Pittsburgh would be motivated today, and especially Brady coming off the Bob Kraft wedding too. When he wasn't all there. But that was a great job by Pittsburgh because they put it all together with Pickett and with Trubisky, and now on the flip side with Tua. It can only help this offense because the Dolphins have struggled without Tua.
No, I think that's a great point. That's a really neat stat. So just to reiterate for everybody listening and for myself, because I got to remember this too. So a team that loses by 21 or more and is a home dog the following week is money in the bank lately.
Yeah. But unfortunately, though, no situations for week 7. So
understood
you for week 7, but that doesn't apply for week 7 because
exactly. But something to keep in mind, right?
So just keep it there. And by the way, too, another thing I want to point out too. Last week, Patrick, 5 games in the NFL, the point spread mattered. This week, 0.
Wow.
Point spread meant nothing because these underdogs won outright, and all the favorites, like the Rams, ended up pulling away against Carolina. Cincinnati barely covered. Buffalo barely covered. So the point spread has not meant anything in these games, which, again, these things just happen. I mean, at times you had 5 games last week where, I mean, you had the Arizona game against Philadelphia that, you had the cover, Chicago against Minnesota. But this week, at least, it hasn't mattered. So, we'll see how it goes moving forward. So speaking of Chicago, why do we have to be subjected to the Bears on primetime again? 2 straight weeks. What is with the Bears and the Broncos? Why do you keep shoving this in our face?
Oh, my God. Please, just get rid of both of them. Trust me, I'm a Broncos fan. I don't want to see them in primetime. It almost forces me to see them. When they're in the middle of a Sunday schedule, I'm usually really busy and I can't really watch them play. I'm running around, I'm doing reports, and I'd rather it be that way if they're going to be this bad. I hate when they're in standalone games where I actually maybe have time to pay attention to them and I have to watch this dreck that they're rolling out onto the field. And to your point, same thing with the Bears. I just can't. I feel like after what we've seen these last few weeks, they should start the flex scheduling earlier in the season.
I feel like, Chicago, you got your one time on Prime. That's it. You're done.
Yep, exactly.
So this is actually another Super Bowl rematch, granted from 1986 Super Bowl.
Exactly.
20.
From the undefeated Bears, or not the undefeated Bears, but the very, very good Bears.
Yeah, they lost to the Dolphins and they were 15-1. But
yeah.
This Patriot team, all right, now the expectations changing a bit. They looked kind of lost, and now Bailey Zappi, who was the top passer in college football last year at Western Kentucky, he's drafted late by New England. They just kind of stashed him away. Mac Jones is hurt. Brian Hoyer gets hurt, so Zappi came in the Packer game. They lost in overtime. They shut out Detroit, and then they destroyed Cleveland. So Belichick is back. The Patriots are back, but is this a little bit of an over-adjustment, you think? I mean, Chicago, in some of these games, they've hung. I don't want to totally rip them. They just don't have a lot of offense. But what about this game on Monday? Because it feels like this is going to be end of the final leg of the parlay of the teaser of taking the Patriots.
Yeah, they made. I think while I don't think a whole lot of people want to line up the Steelers or the Dolphins here, they might want to line up the Patriots in the Monday night game, and I think they probably will. And the Patriots have a very public following, even post Brady. Still, it's interesting. I don't know if it's an over adjustment, but John Murray said tonight, Sunday night, we opened the Patriots -7 and we're quickly bet to -7.5. So I don't think that was public play. I think that was Sharps taking the 7, thinking that this was going to ultimately get to the 7 in the hook or maybe beyond. And he noted, he said, New England is a hot team right now, playing great football with Zappi at QB. He said their defense looks great. He feels like it could be a really long night on the road for Justin Fields. He says he's struggling big time and not really getting any help. And I mean, to your point, they've hung around some of these games, but it's not because they've looked good. And it's certainly, to your point about these primetime games, it's we don't really want to see more of this in primetime, but apparently between next Monday night and tomorrow with my Broncos, we're gonna get more of what we don't want.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be just a whole bunch of garbage, which I get. They got to mix it up, but still, it's just too bad when some of these teams not been competitive, but at least New England is playing a little bit better.
Sure.
Now, just some quick hitters on some of these other games. This Atlanta-Cincinnati game, because the Falcons are 6-0 against the spread. Bengals are laying 6.5 at home, and Cincinnati, again, has turned things around a bit. I mean, granted, they're not running away with the AFC North, but at least they're playing better. But you just ride that Falcon train. You keep going with that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think a lot of people will ride that Falcons train, unbeaten against the spread, halfway to their win total. And I'm just double checking what the opener was on that game at the Superbook. It was Cincinnati 6.5. I'm going to guess there's probably been no movement there, but I'm scrolling through the numbers here just to see if it's on here or not. See if they've made any sort of adjustments on here. Wonder if it's off at the moment because I'm not seeing it on here. But look, I think more people are going to jump on the Falcons as they keep covering the spread. I don't know if this is if this is a goal. Here it is. I was overlooking it. It's still sitting 6.5. Mm-hmm. So no change to this at this point. But they were certainly eager to take the Falcons at 6, 5.5, 5, 4.5, maybe even 4 this week. And granted, the Falcons were at home against a Niners team that's on the road for 2 straight weeks. But the Bengals are. I still feel like trying to figure it out. Maybe still a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover, and they got the win today. But to your point, they could have easily lost that game. So I think I would guess the Falcons are going to get some notice, but at least in the early going, no real change in the number at this point.
What about the Raiders? They're open up as a touchdown favorite against Houston. Both teams off the bye, and the Raiders again just trying to get things back, on the track after they had that slow start and they lose the Chiefs game in which they were up big. So, it's been a disappointing season out there. And I know that I'm sure the response from Raider fans, they're not thrilled with Josh McDaniels, but at least Houston, one thing I'll give the Texans is under Lovie Smith is that they have been competitive in all of these games. They've fallen short, but they finally got over against Jacksonville. They were the last team to win a game. But do you think that's too heavy of a number, the Raiders laying a touchdown?
I don't know if it's too heavy. I might have a hard time laying 7 with the Raiders because I wouldn't trust them at this point. They just seem to be, kind of hit and miss. Now they played well against Kansas City and probably could have won that game. And if they had, and they're sitting at 2-3, and then the Chiefs lose this week, and the Chiefs have a very tough game next week, and they can kind of get back into the mix with the Chargers and the Chiefs. But to your point, the Texans haven't been laying down for anybody at this point. Both teams coming off a bye, so potentially both a little healthier. The Texans 3-1-1 against the number, against the spread. So they're staying competitive. I mean, the loss to the Chargers, 2-score game, but both the losses 2-score. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2-score game against the Chargers, but 1-score game against Denver, one in a loss, 1-score game against Chicago in a loss, and they probably could have won that knowing how bad Chicago is. So 2 of their 3 losses were in 1-score games in which they beat the spread and pushed the number, or depending on where it closed at for you. So like you said, this is a team that hangs around. Like I said, I wouldn't be eager. And again, I've got personal bias against the Raiders, but putting that aside, I wouldn't want to lay 7 with that team. I don't think. It'll be interesting to see if that number holds up or maybe even goes up. The Raiders have been getting a lot of, I've talked to you about this a little bit on your daily show and in previous weeks on our opening line report that, the Raiders have been getting a lot of support here in Vegas. There's definitely been a regional bias that's crept into the betting here. However, at 1-4, it'll be interesting to see if this is the week where maybe that backs off. Maybe people are just like, wait a minute, I can't keep, putting good money after bad on this team. So we'll see this week if fans want to continue to come out, and maybe they will, thinking the Texans are a get right game for the Raiders. But it will be interesting to see if that regional bias, the push on the Raiders, which was going throughout the offseason on Super Bowl odds and AFC West and so forth, and continued through the first few weeks of the season on the spread and on the money line, depending on the situation. We'll see if it continues this week. I'm not sure if it does. It might, but they need to come out and look a lot better. Although, again, they looked good against the Chiefs, had a chance to win that game.
Yeah, look, Houston should have beat Indianapolis week 1. There's no reason they should have lost it. There's a 20-3. The Colts came back inside and forced overtime. The Denver game, look, they didn't score a touchdown in the Denver game. The Broncos played great defensively. It's just they couldn't pull away from the Texans. And then the Chicago game, they had the last-second field goal that beat them. So the Texans have been in these games, and even that Charger game, they had a shot in that Charger game to win. Like that wasn't that score. It looked like LA was running away with it. Houston fought back, and the Chargers fumbled a kickoff. The Texans had the ball, and they were held to a field goal, and then Herbert let them down to a touchdown to kind of put it away. But look, they've hung. Final game I want to go over with you, just a quick hitter. So Tampa Bay is at Carolina. Tampa Bay opened 10 at Carolina, and the Panthers are a complete mess right now. Steve Wilkes is the coach who took over Matt Rule. He was 3-13 in his only year as head coach of the Cardinals. Now he's kind of in the same spot from the standpoint he's got no quarterback. He had Josh Rosen out there. Now Baker Mayfield's hurt. PJ Walker played, and he ended up getting replaced by Jacob Eason, the former Washington quarterback, late in that game against the Rams. So they're a mess, but also Tampa Bay has not been a good road favorite either. I know the first 2 weeks they covered, but as far as bigger road favorites, I should say, Patrick, they have not been good with Brady. Now you're laying 10. It feels like the pressure's on Tampa Bay, but what have you heard and seen with that one?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think the pressure's definitely on Tampa Bay, and you'd like to think that with a team that's led by Tom Brady, they're going to respond to that pressure this week and show that they're not the team that just went on the road and was barely able to scratch out 18 points against Pittsburgh and lose, to a team that people really don't think is that good, but certainly, as you said, and Mike Tomlin coach teams, you never know, and especially at home, and that stat, that 21-point stat is awesome. I cannot wait till I can utilize that. I'll have to definitely pay close attention to these scores and be ready to get on that when that spot play exists, if you will. No movement so far at the Superbook on this. Open 10, still sitting at 10, 41. I mean, it's just weird with a Tom Brady team. I mean, I know Carolina's not good either. Well, and I'm not saying Tampa Bay is not good. I know Carolina's not good. I don't really know what Tampa Bay is at this point. But apparently they're double-digit favorites against Carolina, so the book likes them at least that much. But it's weird seeing a team led by Tom Brady and, in the typical Tom Brady offense that you think of, and a total of 41. That kind of stands out to me. No movement on it, but that's interesting for sure.
Patrick, quickly before we wrap things up, from college on Saturday, who are the big winners for the sports books? I know, the Tennessee game, obviously, they're a big public dog against Alabama. It seemed like Penn State was a big public dog too, and Michigan blew them out. But what do you have as far as who the big winners for the books were on Saturday in college?
Yeah, really, you're spot on. Those were two hugely bet games. I believe I think it was Caesars that told me that or maybe it's Caesars or WinBet, but for one book, that the Alabama Tennessee game had like the fifth most handle of any college football game this season, but Penn State Michigan had more. There was more bet on Penn State Michigan, which I thought was fascinating because everybody was ramped up, and plus you had a good chunk, a chunk more, not a huge chunk more, but basically a game's worth, 3.5 hours worth more time to get down on Alabama Tennessee than you did on Penn State Michigan, which was the 9 a.m. kick here in the Pacific time zone, the noon kickoff on the East Coast. So I thought that was fascinating that game did such numbers. But yes, those two were kind of the real keys. I'm going to be getting a little more information later tonight on this, hoping to hear from some people who are kind of giving me their whole weekend synopsis. But yeah, they did good to Michigan rolling over Penn State because Penn State was definitely a trendy dog. But Tennessee, absolutely a trendy dog, and most books actually needed not only, they would have loved Alabama just to get there outright, Alabama just to find a way to win, but most books needed the Alabama win and the cover. They were betting Tennessee on the spread. They were betting Tennessee on the money line. So all their eggs were in the same basket there, and all of those Tennessee bettors got rewarded. So a good college football outcome on that side for the bettors, and an outcome that fell the book's way with regard to Penn State being a trendy dog and not getting it done against Michigan.
Patrick, where can everybody find your work moving forward for the week and upcoming for the season for people that are new to this and haven't really seen your work? Where could they find now we're on Sunday going into Monday for the football?
Right. So obviously every week I do a college football opening line report and an NFL opening line report. NFL drops tonight every Sunday night. College drops on Monday. There's too much going on. I can't get it all done on Sunday, but those go up each Sunday night and Monday afternoon, respectively. And then those update all week long. We pick out a handful of games, usually half a dozen games for each, and then update them throughout the week. So you can always check back and kind of see how games are evolving throughout the week. And usually we have a video component with the college football as well, a little 2-minute video, just kind of talking about how things are going. And then of course, with the opening line report, we have what you and I are doing now. And thank you very much for stepping in for the newlywed, Tom Carroll, taking a breather here. Appreciate you stepping in and hosting. But yeah, we do this show every Sunday night, and then we embed it with the article and also put it up on VI's YouTube page. So you can see there's a lot of video content of mine and VI's on the YouTube page, and of course on Twitter, and on the website itself. So you can check it all out there. And I'm generally on Mondays and Thursdays. You're gracious enough to have me in on your show in the afternoon to talk, pregame ahead of the Monday night and Thursday night games. The Thursday night games haven't been a whole lot to talk about, and tomorrow night may not be either, but because it's my damn Broncos in there again. But you can see me there as well. And again, appreciate you hosting tonight and walking us through this whole thing.
Absolutely. And next Sunday, you will be graced with Joe Osborne. So he will have you after the Steelers-Dolphins game. So another pinch hitter coming in for Tommy.
I'm good with it. You two are fantastic. I mean, if you folks who are watching the live stream tonight haven't checked out Joe's show each day in the morning for Vegas Insider and Kevin's show each weekday in the afternoon, you need to check those out. You can get just a ton of really good information and really good insight. Let me throw this out there real quick too, just because people are probably wondering the Monday night game. I just alluded to it a moment ago. My lousy Denver Broncos catching 4.5 at the Chargers. Some updated splits straight from DraftKings, pretty much to the minute. Tickets about 3-1. Tickets 3-1 plus on the Chargers. Money 2-1 on the Chargers on the spread. And so they're leaning Los Angeles at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if that continues, and I wouldn't be surprised if some parlays and such are probably running to the Chargers tomorrow night if they live through tonight.
I actually like Denver. I mean, you think I'm nuts? I actually like them. I think that
you're not alone. I've seen some surprising information this week. You're not alone. I mean, they're not going to take the bulk of tickets and money generally, but some people seem to think somehow this is a spot for them that the 4.5 works.
Just score some points. The defense is good.
Please.
Just score some points.
Exactly.
Right? You've got $250 million. Just score some points and stop with the corny stuff on the stand
on the days. Yep.
Just freaking go out there and throw the ball. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
Give me 27 points, man. Let's have it.
Is that asking too much, really?
It seems
Patrick
to be.
Everson. At @PatrickE_Vegas on Twitter, and you can check out his work on Vegas Insider as well. Patrick, thank you so much as always for the time, and look forward to your work for the opening lines in the NFL and college football.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin. Everybody have a good week. Thanks for checking us out tonight.
All right, that is Patrick Everson. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching, and as always, best of luck with your bets.